Hello and welcome to Unleashed. Unleashed is powered by Umbrex. You can visit us at umbrex.com/unleashed, where you can see the transcript of this and every episode and the show notes, of course. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I'm excited to be here today with Keith Durst, who runs FOC, which is a consulting firm that sits at the intersection of hospitality and real estate. His firm has been responsible for some of the major projects in New York City you'll be familiar with. I'm excited to speak with him. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Will.
So, Keith, maybe you could start by telling us about just listing out some of the major projects your firm has worked on.
Sure. So we have projects right now, current projects in 15 different states, but focusing on the New York City projects that we've worked on over the past number of years, one being the complete redefinition of food and beverage at Rockefeller Center, all 12 acres, really interesting project there from transformative in nature in terms of around the rink level all the way through ground floor restaurants in some of the major buildings, to the complete redevelopment of food and beverage at Lincoln Center with the New York Philharmonic, the Whitney Museum downtown, as well as the Brooklyn Museum, obviously in Brooklyn. Then also Blackstone's corporate headquarters here in New York City at 345 Park, which is owned by Rudin, whereby we're working with the Rudin family to finish that building off as well. And I think one of the other projects that's super interesting is the 70 Pine Street project downtown that we did with Crown Shy and Saga as well.
Amazing. Let's take one of these as a case example, and I'd love to hear about the different stages of a project and the different services you provide. Maybe you could take Rockefeller Center as a case study and walk us through the different phases that you'd go through.
Sure. Rock Center is a really interesting project. It's in Midtown New York, and we started it 6+ years ago. We start all projects the same. We want to understand from the developer, from the owner, from the operator's point of view, what the goal of the project is. With Rock Center, it was very specific to create an environment where New Yorkers would want to spend time and, take the focus away from the tourist destination and move the focus more into the New York City definition of a great place for locals to spend time. And what we did there was take a look at what was there, the restaurants around the rink, the restaurants on the floor outside of the rink that were on ground floor, and start saying, okay, what is it that's missing? What is it that's not attracting people, and why? And how can we redevelop it and kind of create an environment that's more open and accessible to New Yorkers to come and be to? And I think we spent a good amount of time working with the development team at Tishman Speyer to kind of understand their needs and then start building out a plan and program around it.
And I will admit, I haven't been to Rock Center to eat recently. I think it probably was pre-pandemic, where I remember they had that nice French bookstore place there, and now there's a new bookstore. I've seen that place. But what was the before the work? What was the kind of food and beverage sort of options and layout at Rock
Sure.
Center?
So it was pretty interesting. Some of the places still exist, but the main places that were changed were there was the Sea Grill and the Rock Center Cafe, which were run by the Patina Restaurant Group. And the Kachina space, also run by Patina, which is a large restaurant group owned by Delaware North, which really focuses on stadiums and casinos and things like that. There was the Brasserie Roulemont, which was up overlooking the rink, which I think is one of the best restaurant spaces anywhere in the country. Then there was also the Acker space and the Bouchon Bakery space, which we completely changed out. On the ground floor, there was a couple of shoe stores that got turned into restaurants on 6th Avenue. There was a really interesting space on 49th Street that's now Other Half Brewery, which is very cool and interesting. So we took this kind of experiential space that really wasn't being used on 49th Street, turned that into Another Half Brewery. We turned an Aldo shoe store into a Bread's Bakery on 6th Avenue. We turned the Bouchon Bakery into Cafe Lodi, which is Ignacio Matos' restaurant and interpreted a really cool cafe that's right outside of NBC Studios. We took Brasserie Roulemont, which was this very tired old brasserie, and turned it into what's now Le Rock, which is run by the team from Frenchette, which is an amazing place. The restaurants that were below grade around the rink, which is now rink level, are now Jupiter, which is run by the women that own King down from Soho. We have a restaurant called Naro, which is run by the team that owns Atamix and Attaboy, which is an amazing restaurant group here in the city. We have Greg Backstrom, who has a bunch of restaurants in Brooklyn, really fun, playful restaurants, has now 5 acres where the old Starbucks was. Matt Abramchek and Smith and Mills from Tribeca is going to be opening up soon in an old Swarovski space. We have JJ Johnson with a field trip down there. The Sussmans opened up a Samesa down there, and just a few other places. I'm sure I'm always missing. Oh, Pebble Bar, which is really interesting, which is run by the Authentic guys that also have Jax on Bond. Took an old architect's office which had a secret tunnel to Johnny Carson's old office, and turned it into a 3-story really cool bar and speakeasy setup.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So in the early phase where you're doing this assessment, tell me a bit about some of the specific things that you would be looking at. Is it you're kind of, I imagine one aspect is you're doing a bit of a competitive analysis, quote unquote, of looking at the other restaurants in the area that already exist, or are you looking at who are the customers that are currently flowing through Rockefeller Center? Are there different people that we want to flow through and that we want to draw in, and then what kind of a restaurants would appeal to them, and are there different kind of categories or price points or cuisines or designs? Like, tell me about some of the specifics of how you'd do this needs assessment.
Well, I mean, I think you hit on some of them. And I think right away, what you have to do is understand what's there and what isn't working and why. And what we're, again, trying to do is create a place where New Yorkers and locals want to spend time. So as we start assessing, the local community and what's available there and what's doing well and why we think it's doing well in Midtown East in particular, over there, and then Midtown up until 6th Avenue is, where the Rockefeller Center area is. You have a 12-acre estate, right in the middle of the city. And what's missing is any form of authentic New York experience, on the campus itself, and a place where people want to spend time. And what we say is anytime you have a really good set of transportation or transportation hub in your building, it can either work for you or against you. If you don't have good food and beverage and good places to go after work, it works against anybody that works there. You have 9 million square feet of office in this space. If you don't have places where people are going to want to come and meet you and eat or drink and spend time with you, your friends and colleagues and coworkers are going to want you to go and meet them at their places someplace else. And that's going to cost you time and energy and aggravation. So what we wanted to do, again, is create something that wasn't there. So we weren't able to really use a competitive set in terms of what was there and how we could make it work and how we could figure out the dollars that would make it work that way. What we really had to do is say, if we build what we think will work here, do we believe that we'll create an environment where people are willing to come and spend additional time or come and meet people and use the transportation to its benefit? And will the people in the office get that time back? And will the people that are staying there get that time back? And the people that are spending additional time be able to spend more than one day there? So by doing that, we want to create different levels of food and beverage, right? You have great bakeries and a brewery and cafes. You also need a lot of sit-down seating, and you need enough seats that the people that are occupying the office, even if it's at 70% or 80% occupancy, will have the opportunity to go there. You also want to give the people that are working at Rockefeller Center the ability to make reservations at places like The Rock that are very difficult to get into because they're so popular. The Rock, Lodi, these other restaurants, Jupiter, Naro, these are very challenging restaurants to get reservations in because they're so popular already and so busy. So we wanted to create an environment where those people working at the center will be able to actually get into the restaurants too. But we don't want the restaurants full of only people working there. We want locals to come. We want people from downtown to come. We want different forms of people, different types of people. We want old people, young people, to be there at different times of day. And we want to use all the different day periods to really maximize what these restaurants should be. So I think you start planning it out, and it's a matter of when you have so many great spaces that they had there and the infrastructure and the ability to work with a team as smart and as sophisticated as the Tishman team is, and with such desires to make change, you can just start really kind of ideating with them to kind of figure out what that is, and then try to figure out schematically how it all comes together. And again, they have incredible teams of engineers and leasing people that are smart, that see the goal as a group, and then you have to work within those bounds that they put there.
I imagine that, so you talked a bit about having almost destination kind of restaurants that would draw people to the space or get people to stay there. I imagine that there may be some balancing act where you probably also want to have some kinds of restaurants where office workers can pop down and get a quick lunch, and they don't have to, sit down and have an hour meal, but people want like a quick takeout and go back to their office. How do you sort of balance those different use cases and demands? Like people want to pick up something quick for breakfast on their way to work, or have a quick lunch, or have a sit-down lunch. How do you balance all those things?
I mean, Rock Center is a little bit different because they have so much space, right? There's different concourses that have a lot of fast casual options. So they have a really busy Sweet Green that's already there. They have busy sandwich shops and some other things, like Ali Doro's there, which is an amazing sandwich shop. And they have multiple coffee shops that do well. So it's a matter of bringing people in that also understand throughput and understand mise en place and understand up for periods, that they know it's going to start getting busy at 11:30 and they need to be prepared for a big rush between 11:30 and 1 o'clock. And it's people that, know how to run proper F&B businesses and provide hospitality with it. So as you're mixing in these great sit-down restaurants, you also need these great sandwich shops. And you take somebody like Streep from Ali Doro that knows and understands throughput, and you say, okay, this is going to be a very busy sandwich shop, make sure you set up for it in such a way and you're prepared and know what you're doing. And he puts together a plan with his team that makes sense and puts and deals with the mise en place and gets it set up so that he knows that when it's getting crushed through that period of time, you can make it work. And then how do you attract during the shoulder periods to let the tourists and the other people kind of fill in those spaces, post lunch, pre-dinner, kind of post afternoon snack and coffee. And it's a matter of really building programs and making sure that you have people that understand time periods, throughputs, meal periods, the vibe, the lighting, the music, how it all plays together. And I think if you build teams around those programs and product, and then from there, what we inevitably say is that at the end, the guest makes the menu. So as you're starting to build more places that are like this, the people that are coming on a regular basis are going to kind of help you shape what these menus need to be and how much time needs to be spent, and whether it's a 45-minute lunch or an hour and 15-minute lunch, or what that looks like and what the costs need to be. And you need a little time for it to kind of figure itself out too. So you have to have a patient group of developers and a group of operators that are willing to be a little bit nimble. And I think if you get it just right, you can have something pretty magical there.
Let's go to the kind of next phase. So you've done this initial assessment and come up with a sense of different types of restaurants you'd like to have in the space. What's kind of the next phase after that, when you have a particular space in mind and say, oh, this place we want to have a brewery, or this place we want to have a bakery, or this place we want to have a sit-down thing that's going to draw people in?
Well, the next phase, it's kind of that's kind of simple. The next phase is financial underwriting. You need to start understanding what it's going to cost to do all this, from the developer's point of view, from the operator's point of view, what the pre-opening budgets are going to look like, what the build budgets are going to look like, what the critical path to open is going to be like. So you need to develop those, and then you need to get sign off on all that, and then you need to understand if you can take that to market and find people that can work within those bounds.
Oh, interesting. So I guess I was imagining, perhaps, ignorantly, that you would then kind of like rent the space out to a restaurateur who would then build it up. But is it more like you are partnering with different restaurant groups, where the Rock Group would kind of be a partner in the venture, or how does that work?
I mean, not getting into like deal structure and what that actually feels like. It's the understanding is this. In today's world, in a post-COVID world, if you don't consider your landlord a partner in a restaurant, then you have a problem. One of our guiding principles at FOC is that you can't do a good deal with bad people, and you can't do a bad deal with good people. And what that means is simple. Even if it's a straight lease that you're doing with a landlord, if you're having a problem, your landlord has to be having a problem too. If your landlord's having a problem, then you're having a problem too. So if you're providing a service that the landlord's not happy with, or you're not providing food service at breakfast and lunch because you're not making enough money from it, but the landlord really needs it to make their community better, then that needs to be something you need to work on with the landlord to figure it out. If you can't operate effectively on the numbers because the rent's too high, or because your situation isn't allowing for it, because of traffic, because of flow, because of demand, then you need to be able to work that out with your landlord. So as we schematically design and right size the spaces in the restaurants, what we're trying to do is financially kind of come up with plans and programs that we think will work for both landlord and operator. If you can't get it right these days, this isn't about the landlord coming in and saying, I want to maximize my dollars on rent for this space. It's about a landlord having the vision to say, having the right operator in here is going to make the properties a better whole. It's going to make the property worth more whole, and it's going to make the people that are here want to spend more time here. But that doesn't work if there's not some sense of partnership between landlord and operator, between developer and operator, between chef and restaurateur. As you go through the whole thing, it's not really about the deal structure. It doesn't matter what the deal structure is. It only matters that there's a true and solid relationship between whoever's running the space, whether it's a tenant or a partner, and the landlord, whether it's a developer or a landlord or some type of financier. So as you start building these plans, they have to work financially. At least we have to get pretty close to what we think the proper underwriting is. We have to get pretty close to what we think the proper P&L should look like here, regardless of what the deal structure looks like. And all parties have to be involved to say, okay, we think we can make that work in this environment. Understanding that a lot of this took place pre-COVID, and that the world changed while this build out was happening, and all the parties had to be pretty agile and move around to be willing to kind of figure it out as it goes. So I think that that's really important for people to kind of see and understand that.
That's such a fascinating perspective, and educational for me. Tell me about when so you're developing the financial plan, and then are you doing that with one particular restaurant group in mind that you think would be a fit? Or once you develop that financial plan, do you go and then kind of shop that around to 2 or 3 restaurant groups that you think might be in the space? Like, how does that next phase work?
Well, I think what we try to do is identify the type of use for each of the spaces and the general type of restaurant that they should be, and drawing from my experience and the experience on our team, try to build a financial plan around that type and style of restaurant. And then we have to get buy-in from the developer in terms of who they believe should be the proper operator, or that they believe that that's the right style of food and the right style of service. So there's a lot of communication back and forth between our team and the development committee and or developer team. And then naturally in an environment, there's always sign off from the full-blown executive committee and or president of the company, or depending on who it is, and who's been empowered to make those decisions. That all has to run through that too. So we can't wait to get that stuff through committee while we're trying to figure out the financial underwriting. So we have to take what we think is our best estimate of what we believe those restaurants or spaces should be, and kind of draw from our experience, and we have pretty significant experience doing this, kind of to understand how we think it's all going to line up and work together. And then it's up to us to convince parties on both sides that they're the right party to operate it, and they're the right partner to have on the landlord side. So, it becomes, there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of meetings. There's a lot of people getting used to one another. There's a lot of people that have not met before or done these kinds of transactions or been involved in an environment, in a Class A office building environment like this before. And it's really our job and responsibility to get everybody comfortable that they're going to be working together and that we think that it's the right fit. And if you can get everyone to buy in, and then the financial underwriting looks reasonable, then to get the design people involved and try to find some economies of scale when it comes to infrastructure and whatnot. And then you have great engineers working, and it's kind of, it's really, a really quite intricate process, having everybody working together at the same timeline and understanding what the critical path is and how it is affected by one party falling off or not, doing their job. So, we're under significant pressure to meet certain timelines and guidelines, and it's our responsibility to keep things moving forward.
Talk to me about the different skill sets or the different, kind of types of people that are involved in getting one of these designed and built? So you mentioned a couple, and I imagine there's something about the design of the restaurant, but then like the decor and the specific menu and layout of the space, and then the engineers for all the equipment. But give me a longer list of what are the different skill sets that have to come together.
Yeah, I mean, so I think to get specific, the first thing you have is a developer that has their own engineering team and their own building and maintenance and superintendent staff that knows and understands the ins and outs of the building and where everything goes and where the connections need to be made and how all that works together. And I think that's a really important aspect of it, using the building's expertise and personnel to kind of understand how it starts, so that when we start from a place at some form of modified white box, so that we know where everything enters the space, and now all we have to do is distribute it around the space. Then we have the engineers that will do the calculations to make sure that we have all the proper black iron, gas, water, drainage, and different services going to where it needs to go in the space. We have our food service specialists that are going to help us design the kitchen properly, making sure that we fall within the bounds of whatever is blocked off with how much CFM we can push through the different forms of exhaust and where that goes and how that's being maintained. We have health department people that come in and make sure we're following all the guidelines of the health department as we go through and organize that. We have an architect of record that's going to have to file everything, along with an expediter that's going to have to get the filings done and executed. Then we have a designer that sometimes can act as an architect of record, and the designer will work with our team over the schematic design and the operator to make sure that the restaurant's going to be not just functional, but that the form of the restaurant's going to be to the operator's taste. And then the developer has a final say in all of this, because it's within his Class A office community, and they're going to want to sign off on any designs and any engineering demands that are on the space as well. And that doesn't really talk about the specialists that are going to be doing the actual operations and or the financial people that goes. But that's the group of people that will get us all the way through. Once we start getting into the picking of the FF&E, which is the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, we usually bring a smallware specialist on and the procurement agent to be able to grab all those things as well. There could be some financial people that we're bringing in. They can get involved in additional financing of equipment, things like that, should that be necessary or should it be allowed. And then pre-opening inventory people, there could be beverage specialists if the operator team doesn't have the right beverage specialists on site or as a part of their group, and so on and so forth. So it can be pretty involved.
Yeah. And then at what point would they, have the chef come to actually design the menu and train the whole team and to cook it and get the website and all that stuff?
I mean, the menu has to be designed well in advance of the design of the restaurant. You have a general understanding of what you want to serve in order to design the kitchen. The kitchen's going to be designed generally around a specific menu. What we try to do is, anytime we're working in someone's building, whether it's a Class A office building or a hotel or a high-end residential building, is you want to kind of try to keep the kitchen design into what we call a day two specific design that will allow us to swap some equipment out without making any specific structural changes and or specific changes to infrastructure should this concept not work or should they have to pivot. But we want the kitchen to be designed around what we think the menu is for the most part. That is to say, we're not willing to specifically state that we're only going to do a high heat kitchen if we're going to do a specific amount of Asian cooking, or if we're going to do a lot of steak or hamburgers and we're going to need a lot of extraction. But we want to kind of figure out what that plan is ahead of time. The chef will work with their operator group, whether, typically speaking, the chef may be a partner or may not be a partner, depending on how specific a one restaurant is to a specific offering. So some operating groups have brand name chefs that come along with it. Some operating groups have plans and programs done by corporate chefs, and other operating groups have just plan and programs done by their corporate office. So depending on how specific they are, significant amount of projects we have, the chef is involved in every aspect of the design, not just the kitchen design, menu design, but it's also typically involved deeply in the furniture selection, designing of smallware, and the connectivity between the kitchen and the space and the basement space, storage space, and so on. So again, it's a matter of someone that can communicate to these people on both sides of the conversation, making sure that the operator has access to what they need, the path of travel for garbage and for deliveries is feasible and reasonable, the path of travel to wherever their prep spaces are feasible and reasonable. All the guidelines are met in terms of all the different consultants that are coming through, and we're getting to a point where we're going to be able to open up a restaurant and function within the financial underwriting and within the goal of the developer.
Amazing. Keith, could you tell us a minute about how your firm kind of got going? Because these sort of projects that you've listed, Rockefeller Center, Lincoln Center, they're kind of marquee properties in the United States. You probably didn't start that way. Tell us about how your firm got started.
Well, I mean, it was kind of an interesting way to put a group of people together. I had some experience opening and building teams to operate high-end restaurants here in New York City. And from there, I had gotten reached out to by a hotelier that wanted some help getting organized and building a hotel product built around food and beverage. And that hotel, there was a main hotel in Brooklyn called the William Vale. At the time, I spent a significant amount of time trying to organize and get that food and beverage set up for the whole building, and spent a lot of time from the knowledge I had from the previous restaurants that I had opened, kind of getting organized and set up and getting that run and figuring out all these same systems for a single building. And I did a lot of single buildings. It was just for a significant amount of time, it was me and one other person. And then what I started to realize was, as I was, seeing a lot of different opportunities, that I needed other people on a team to be able to execute, and or for me to be able to continue to grow the business, I needed competent people that actually all understand how to run restaurants, whether they're small or large. I have a partner, Todd Birnbaum. Todd came out of ARC Restaurant Group. He opened up restaurants up and down the East Coast, as well as setting up food and beverage for a stadium. That's an important skill that I had no idea how to do at scale, and Todd certainly had the experience on how to do that. I have other really brilliant people on my team that have managed significant projects, whether it's a person like Aya Keta that was running director of operations for a 3 Michelin star restaurant in California, and before that for a design team here in New York that had a bunch of different restaurants, and someone that could manage a very special project like a Lincoln Center, like a Whitney, and know how to do the ins and outs at the highest possible level and understand what it means to work with trustees and board members at a certain level and competency. So I started to surround myself and build a group of people that I had met in the industry over years, and had kind of moved on and done some light consulting and moved out of restaurants and tried to figure out different ways of doing things. I was able to assemble a team of 14, I think now 15 people that all have specific skill sets within the hospitality industry, but also understand real estate, have some sense of financial backgrounds, mostly, some do not, but understand building projects, meeting deadlines. And I've picked people that kind of work into what I think is important as we continue to build. Most importantly, they're all really good people that people enjoy spending time with and want to be around, that also have a tremendous amount of respect for restaurants that run well, for restaurant groups that have built something ground up. We work with a lot of up and coming restaurateurs and teams, but we also work with established groups, and we all have the ability to learn from them and lean on them. We partnered into a number of restaurants, have small ownership interests in a number of restaurants, and as we do that, we're able to lean on those groups to kind of really see what's happening in the current market in terms of labor enforcement, in terms of hiring, firing, so on and so forth, and really be able to kind of stretch into it to make it really work. And one of my closest friends is a chef named Wiley Dufresne that I'm invested in his pizza restaurant called Stretch, which happens to be right across the street from my office. But Wiley's a person that I know that I can call and lean on for general information about kitchen and cooking, and certainly understanding path of travel and understanding what really works in the kitchen. There's very few people that have as much experience or really depth of knowledge as Wiley does. And for me, that's important to be able to lean on somebody like that, or Gotti Pellig that owns Brett's Bakery, and be able to have him, spend some time with me, kind of walking me through some challenges that he's faced, or our friends at breweries, or our friends at bigger restaurants, and some of the groups that we represent, and really be able to lean on it as a community. And as we're doing that, we're also finding out what it is that they want to do, how they want to expand their businesses and move forward in their careers and lives. And we hope to be able to match them with great developers. And I think one of the reasons why we end up with some of the best projects is because of the relationships that we've built in the community. So in New York City, in the hospitality community, in the real estate community, we pick projects that we think are very motivational to our team. So our team takes a lot of pride in working on the projects. They're excited about that. They want to spend time there. They want to bring people there. When I see the excitement on our team on a project, and I know we're picking the right projects, if we have a bunch of projects or a bunch of things to work on and no one seems excited about it, or people are just kind of going through the motions, then I know that we're not working on the right project. We're not working with the right people. So we focus energy and excitement and knowledge, and we kind of wrap it all together. And the best way to do that is on projects that we know not only are we going to be excited about, but operators are excited about, and chefs are excited about, and financial people are excited about. And when you do that, then you can come up with something great. And fortunately, I think we're the best at doing what we do. I'm not sure that there are a whole bunch of other people that have figured out ways of building these communities the way we have. And it's been very important to us. It's allowed us to join some boards. It's allowed us to kind of reinvest in some of the people that we care about, and it's allowed us to build a team that works together. And I think that's really, how we were able to mold this over the past 15 years or so into a pretty formidable consulting company.
What an incredible story, Keith. For listeners that want to check out your firm, read more about what you do, where would you point them online?
There's not a lot. I think we have a website. We had to put one up for a developer at one point a few years ago. I haven't looked at it in a long time. At friendofchef.com. I think there's something up there now. Quite frankly, we try to stay out of the media. It's what we try not to do is make these projects about us, but it's about the developer, it's about the restaurateurs and operators. So I think the thing to do would be, ask a bunch of different restaurateurs in whatever community you are, somebody that you would trust that would help you expand and grow. My best guess is our name comes up.
Amazing. Keith, thank you so much for joining. This was an incredible discussion.
It's a pleasure. Be well.